Good afternoon, everyone. I'm kind of worried about the time about it, so let me stick to my note a little bit. So I'm present here with the title in and on spatial encodings in Moklen, insights into notional categorization of topological relations. So my presentation will be in the INRAD structure, so I have a slide to show now. And so first introduction, then methods, findings, and discussion. Okay, first of all, I'm wondering how different languages describe where things are. So in this research, I'm focusing on Moklen, a mainland Southeast Austronesian language, spoken precisely in southern Thailand, and how it talks about things being in and on. Unlike many studied languages, Moklen hasn't been much explored in detail, especially how it uses words to describe space. It may show us a fresh way of thinking of space. So my big question is, how does Moklen use words? Or to be more specific, prepositions to describe things like an apple in a bowl or a book on a table? Does it follow the same patterns as other languages, or does it have its own system? Some experts in psychology and language suggest universal categories for topological relations, especially containment or in relations, and support for on relations across languages. But does Moklen fit these categories? To find out, I use an approach of conducting an experiment to observe how people speak. So far, it seems Moklen might have its own way of talking about in and on relations, which challenges our usual understanding of spatial language. So hopefully Moklen then may help us see the world in some new ways. It could even change how many people think of or think about space itself. This is just my overview of my presentation today. So let's see more. Okay. So like I told you before, languages may use prepositions to describe spatial relationships, like things being in or on something. Today, I will unpack this topic by examining the Moklen language spoken in Southeast Asia, precisely Phang southern Thailand. In my research, I adopted a method that evolved gathering data on how Moklen speakers use prepositions when describing specific spatial concepts. The focus was on two common types of spatial relationships, in relations and on relations, as I said. So specifically speaking, containment or in relations refers to situations where one object is inside another, while support or in relations refer to scenarios or situations where one object is held up from beneath or from below by another object. Why this approach? Remember, we are curious if Moklen follows the universal in and on patterns or has a unique way of talking about space. By asking native speakers to describe spatial scenarios or spatial configurations, I initiated natural conversation focused on spatial relationships. By analyzing their spoken descriptions, I could see how Moklen used specific words to show these relations. Interestingly, as I said, some psychologists and linguists, you may name Piaget, think that all languages have universal concepts to talk about space. For example, describe things as being in something like a box or on something like a table. This research wanted to look more closely at these ideas. it focuses on whether the ideas of being in something and on something are basic or separate from each other. The study wanted to see if this is the case or this is true in the Moklen language, or how Moklen-speaking people think about these situations. In my research, I applied a method for data collection. I used a tool called the Topological Relation Picture Series, TRPS, designed and initiated by Baumann and Peterson in 1992, which is a set of 71 images depicting objects in various spatial configurations. I presented these images to native speakers of the Moklen language. Each participant was then asked to describe the location of the objects in their own words. In response to my prompt, where is X? Or in Moklen, X and M. This approach allows me to gather natural language data on how the speakers express spatial relationships. For the 6 participants in this research, they are around 60 years old and come from 2 villages in Phang, which is in southern Thailand, as I mentioned earlier. I picked many of them very carefully because they are really good at explaining things or places. Long story short, they like chatting. For the precision of analysis, I in fact collected descriptions of all 71 scenes, picture scenes, but in this study I only looked at descriptions of just 22 scenes. I chose these because this research is about typical in and on relationships, as I mentioned. These relationships are based on differences in attributes and language descriptions suggested by Landau-Lee's team. Yeah, something like a characteristic related to what is called containment and support. So after I collected and organized what the speaker said through transcription, coding, annotation, and data cleaning, I extracted the prepositional word descriptors and used both descriptive and inferential statistics to understand the words better, as well as analyzing speaker variation in spatial descriptions. I paid attention to prepositional words they use to describe what things are in or on others. This was to answer my first question about how the Moklen language is used to describe space. I also wanted to see how speakers of the Moklen language group these spatial relationships. This was to answer my second question about how space is categorized in Moklen. I wanted to see if these groupings are the same as the universally perceived categories of in and on, or if Moklen speakers have different ways of thinking about these space configurations. Next, I'm going to share with you the findings of the study. We'll see what the Moklen language can tell us about how they understand space. Yeah, okay. So please look at the histogram first on your left. It shows how often different prepositional words are used for containment or support in the Moklen language. We have here 5 types of words. Here, ta, the green one, shown in green, lam in red, hat in orange, hang in yellow. The one is borrowed from the Thai language, I presume, and book in blue. The height of each bar shows how often that prepositions is used. How often that particular preposition is used. The taller the bar, the more often the word is used. The red bar, which represents lam, is the tallest, meaning it's used the most, 50 times. The green bar is next, then the orange, the yellow, and the blue bar is the shortest, meaning book is used the least, only 1 time. It's clear that the first 3 prepositions are used the most when describing in and out relations. If you look at these prepositions are used in different scenes, we can see that only the three most common prepositions are used only by themselves. Maybe here, just three. Three mean like lam, and head. You can see the so green, red, and orange there. We can see that only the three most common prepositions are used only by themselves in certain scenes. The less common prepositions are not only for any scenes and are used less often because of differences in how speakers describe the scenes. This suggests that there might be at least three categories within the scenes of in and on relations in Moklen. Uh, each linked to the exclusive usage of certain words in certain scenes, but we need to study this idea more to be sure. I use a method called clustering, actually, accumulative clustering, to see if the way prepositions are used in the Moklen language can help us group TRPS scenes. The result is right in front of you. You can see that the way prepositions are used shows three main groups within the in and on relations. This matches what I thought from the first analysis of the types and their frequencies. From the right, the rate group is linked to the use of love. So now I will talk about the definition. So the preposition is used when something is inside something else. The green group is linked to a. The preposition is used when something is supported by something else. Here's the surprise: there are third orange cluster linked to head, which means something is relative position to another. This suggests that Moklen has a way to talk about in and on situations beyond the commonly known in and on prepositions as found in English. The other two prepositions that are not used often don't help show any specific groups within the spatial relations, I mean, Tang and Boog. So this is not surprising because they are not used exclusively for any things. So to make sure these groups make sense, I used three other methods of statistics: chi-square test, factor analysis, and Pearson correlation. These results are very interesting. I classify the TPRS situation based on the relationship between the object and what the place is located look like. There are three types: object, 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 container, object, location. The chi-square test indicates a link between the choice of prepositions and different types of relationships. For example, lam is used when an object is in a container. So this tells us that different prepositions create unique categories in Moklen. This shows how important prepositions are in classifying spatial relationships. Also, you might notice that the three groups are not equally separate. In our understanding and thinking, you can see that the orange one is closer to the green one as contrasted with the red one. So this is not just a result of clustering, statistic clustering as confirmed by my factor analysis. It shows that at least two factors affect the distance between the groups. One is whether there is contact or not, and the other is whether there is inclusion or not. Lastly, the closeness between the green group for support and the orange group for relative positioning, as well as the distance from the red group for containment, is further looked at by Pearson correlation. It accordingly shows that the types of preposition used for support and relative positioning in Moklen are used in a manner that is inversely related to containment. This suggests that the perception of containment in Moklen is not the same as both support and relative positioning in the same language. So although the three groups show a possible way to classify three types of spatial relationships within the domain of in and on relations, this research doesn't suggest that these categories are totally separate or discrete. Here is the table that sorts situation into categories based on my analysis. These categories are containment in red, support in green, and relative positioning in orange. And each one has a common preposition linked with it. But when we look at how the individual informants describe these situations, we saw differences. Sometimes the prepositions used for each category overlapped. This means that the categories might not be completely separate, which is different from what we thought based on the idea of universal spatial categorization, between in and on relations. So to help us understand the point, I created a dot picture using a technique called multidimensional scaling MDS. The scatter plots show us different TRPS situations. What's interesting is that the plots suggest that the boundaries between our categories might not always be clear-cut. In other words, sometimes it can be difficult to draw a distinct line between them, especially support the red one and relative positioning the orange ones. So to discuss what was found, I would say there is a common belief that our understanding of space is universal, regardless of our language and cultural background. However, this research on the Moklen language has covered some variations. I have 3 ideas to talk about. First, for the first thing, in Moklen, I have identified 3 key categories in describing in and on relations: containment, support, and relative positioning. These categories are different from the 2 typical in and on categories as we may find in English, suggesting that our understanding of spatial boundaries can indeed differ across languages, challenging the universal hypothesis. For the second thing, it's generally assumed that categories like containment and support are discrete and universally understood. However, this study found that Moklen speakers can use the same prepositional words for both categories. This finding again challenges the idea of universal spatial categories and suggests that our understanding of space isn't always as straightforward as we might think. For the last thing, it's often thought that different spatial categories are equally distinct from each other. However, my research in Moklen found that this isn't always the case as well. Some categories like containment and support in Moklen are cognitively closer to each other due to the potential categorical overlaps. So this finding offers a new perspective on how different spatial categories related to each other. In conclusion, these findings not only highlight the unique aspects of spatial categorization in the Moklen language, but also challenge our overall understanding of spatial cognition. They remind us that our perception of space is, to some extent, I think, shaped by the language we speak. Hopefully, this research opens some new avenues for understanding how language and cognition interact or should be described. Thank you.